Well, it's an honor to have the ambassador to the United States from Israel with us, unfortunately under these circumstances, Ron Dermer. First, I'd like your general take on what has taken place here. And secondly, I know you've been in Pittsburgh. Who did you meet with and what did you see there, sir?
Well, it's a horrific act, the worst anti-Semitic attack in U.S. history. They claimed 11 lives. I was in Pittsburgh yesterday, got to meet with members of the community, got to meet with the mayor, with the county executive, with Senator Casey was there. We had congressmen, Republicans and Democrats, and talked to a lot of people. I have to tell you, Mark, it's a very, very strong community, and I think a special community in Squirrel Hill, Pittsburgh there. They're very, very tight-knit. It's not just tight-knit among the Jewish community, but also the non-Jewish community supporting them. And I went to an event last night that really brought out the entire community, faith leaders, Christians, Jewish faith leaders, a Muslim leader who actually spoke there as well and spoke very well. And I think the whole community is just trying to support the Jewish community there. And everyone told me the same thing. We never thought it was going to happen here. And I think they were just shocked and stunned. And what I wanted to do as Israel's ambassador to the United States is just tell them that Israel stands with them and that they're not alone. And in Israel, yesterday morning, our government meets on Sunday, because Sunday's like Monday in Israel, the first day of the week. And the government meets every Sunday, and there was a moment of silence where the entire government of Israel stood, because we are the one and only Jewish state. And so we feel a special sense of solidarity with Jewish communities around the world, and that's why it was important for me to be in Pittsburgh yesterday.
Now, you were born in Miami. I just want people to know this. You're born in Miami. Your father was the mayor of Miami. Your brother was the mayor of Miami.
Miami Beach.
Miami Beach.
We're sticklers about that. Yeah, we're the ones with the nice beaches. Yeah.
That's true. So you know the United States very, very well. Obviously, you are an Israeli citizen, and you're very close to the Prime Minister of Israel. So when you look at this, we see growing anti-Semitism throughout Europe. The FBI put out a report, the latest report. You see growing anti-Semitism, or hate crimes, as they call it, in the United States. What do you make of this?
Well, listen, it is, as you say, a growing problem. Many people want to say that it began in 2016 with President Trump's election. That's simply not true, and you should look at the FBI statistics that you mentioned. In 2014 and 2015, hate crimes against Jews accounted for over half of hate crimes against religious groups in the United States. Now, Jews are only 2% of the population, Mark, and they're accounting for over half. And by the way, there were periods over the last 15 years was about 75%, and the number of attacks, hate crimes against Jews were actually much bigger than it was in 2014 or 2015. I really think what you have, Mark, is the rise of anti-Semitism over the last couple decades. What you had was about a half century after the Holocaust, where it was politically incorrect to attack Jews. And I think what you've seen happen over the last 2 decades is that it's once again become fashionable to attack Jews, and it's no longer politically incorrect to go after Jews. Now, most of the attacks actually hide themselves behind a mask of hatred towards Israel, to the one and only Jewish state. But the singling out of Israel is very much like they used to single out the Jews for special treatment. So I think you've seen this on the rise. It's not just in America. It's all around the world. You've seen attacks against Jews in Paris, attacks against Jews in Toulouse, attacks against Jews in Copenhagen, attacks against Jews in Brussels and in London, and even in the United States. This is not the first attack. There was an attack in 2006 at a Jewish federation in Seattle. There was an attack in 2014 at a Jewish community center outside of Kansas City, which I think claimed 3 lives. And this is just the worst attack. But this is a growing problem, and I think one of the issues is social media. Because, you know, you can have a very, very small fraction of the population that are these, these crazy, I don't know if I'd call them crazy, but evil people. You could have 1/100th of 1% could be 30,000 Americans. And these are extremists. It could be people like David Duke. It could be neo-Nazis. It could be white nationalists, all sorts of people. But online, they can actually build communities of hate in a way that they couldn't do before. So I think as you get more and more people going into social media, as you have this rise of these online hate groups, I think it's extremely dangerous, and it has given them a sense of community of haters, and I think it's important to take action against it. I will tell you, Mark, that in Israel, we monitor the Internet. Now, we're a different country, and you have constitutional protections here, and I know that you're a great defender of them. We don't have a First Amendment, a Second Amendment, a Fourth Amendment, but hopefully your law enforcement authorities can figure out a way within your laws and constitutional rights that Americans have to figure out a way to monitor this so they can see when sort of this kind of hate pops up and then be able to take action before the crime takes place. That's what we have in Israel. And it's been very effective at preventing a lot of these types of attacks. I mean, I would love to believe that this is going to be the last attack, but I think given that these haters are communicating with each other, I think it's important for your authorities to see what they can do to prevent the next attack.
And you also have armed guards at many of your synagogues.
Yeah, that's a reality that unfortunately Jews face around the world. If you go to London in a synagogue, you are more likely than not to see actually a policeman or a police car outside. Same thing in Paris, same thing in Brussels, and in other places around the world. Now, you don't want to see that happen in America. I do think that on high holidays, Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, in many synagogues, you do have local law enforcement authorities, at least since 9/11. But this was just Jews going about their business praying in a synagogue on a Saturday morning, and to think that every single synagogue in America needs that type of protection is sad. But unfortunately, at least for the foreseeable future, it might be necessary not only to protect the population, but to give them a sense of security. One thing that's important is for political leaders to speak out very, very strongly against that. I was very pleased to hear from President Trump. I thought he had one of the strongest condemnations, frankly, I have ever heard. I've never heard a non-Israeli, non-Jewish leader say that those who try to destroy the Jews, we will destroy them. I've never heard that, Mark, from any leader. And not only was was I heartened to hear the President of the United States say that, but I was heartened to hear the applause he got from the people who were at that rally in Illinois when he said that. And it's important for people on the right to spit out the extremists among them, the David Dukes. It's important for people on the left to spit out the extremists like Louis Farrakhan and others, and to say that there's no place for this type of hatred in the United States.
Well, mainstream conservatives have never considered themselves far right or embraced David Duke. We repudiate people like that. But we do have a growing BDS movement in this country. It's growing on our college campuses. Quite frankly, it's growing in the left, and there's haters everywhere of every breed, of every stripe, and so forth and so on. But in some ways, it's getting more and more mainstream. The UN is rabidly anti-Semitic. The BDS movement, which has been mainstreamed with many corporations and many organizations and political organizations in Europe, and even somewhat in the United States. This is intended as an anti-Semitic, anti-Jew, anti-Israel movement. Do you see this growing too?
No question about it. I mean, for many years, the UN has been ground zero for anti-Semitism and holding Israel up to a standard that it holds no other nation on earth. When you have, 2/3 of the General Assembly, UN General Assembly resolutions against Israel, that's got to tell you something. When you have more resolutions passed against Israel in the UN Human Rights Council than all the countries of the world combined, that's got to tell you something. And this is a deep problem. People thought it was a thing of the past. It's not. It's very serious, and it's growing, and that's why it's so important. There's an old saying that, it starts with the Jews, but it never ends with the Jews. We have always been seen as the canary in the coal mine of civilization. So when you have those noxious fumes that are directed at the Jews, it's not going to end there. It's going to spread, and that's why it's very important for people to, frankly, Mark, put all the politics aside and stand together, whether you're on the right, a conservative, or a liberal, whether you're a Republican or Democrat, and say no to this kind of hate, and lead by showing that this type of bigotry, this type of hatred will have no sanction in the United States of America.
I agree completely with putting politics aside, but I've been watching, as I'm sure you have in the United States, our media. And it's politics first, second, and third. It's politics morning, noon, and night. It's politics. Is Trump responsible for this? Is Trump this? Is Trump this? Is Trump this? And this killer, this mass murderer, this Jew hater, he hated Trump. He didn't like Trump. He said he had too many Jews around him. Now, you have in President Donald Trump, in my view, the greatest supporter of Israel of any American president. He's acknowledged that Jerusalem is the capital. No president did that before. He's moved our embassy to Jerusalem. They all promised. They never did it before. He took this Iran deal, which was passed by Congress and the prior administration, which gave tens of billions of dollars to this terrorist regime, which has the United States and Israel in its sights. He said no more to that. I mean, from my perspective as an American, as a conservative who's been watching this stuff for a long, long time, this president has been the best friend of the Jewish state, certainly during my lifetime.
Yeah, I mean, I've said this before. We've never had a stronger supporter of Israel than President Trump. And frankly, it hasn't even been close in terms of what he's done. I mean, you listed some of those things that he's done. You have Nikki Haley, Ambassador Haley at the UN, pushing back against all this anti-Israel sentiment, obviously the decision in Jerusalem. In the case of Iran, look, Iran is the most anti-Semitic regime in the planet. They call for the annihilation of the one and only Jewish state. And you have Hezbollah, a terror proxy of Iran, that actually one of Hezbollah's leaders said a few years ago that he hopes all the Jews will come to Israel so he can wipe them out there. So this president of the United States stood up to the entire world and withdrew from the nuclear deal with Iran, has restored sanctions against Iran, and in doing so, he has starved this anti-Semitic terrorist regime of hundreds of billions of dollars that would be used to kill Jews and to murder Israelis, and also to threaten all of our Arab neighbors and everything else. One good thing that came out of that nuclear deal is brought Israel and the Arab world closer together. But listen, we appreciate very much and are very grateful for that support. And like I said, I'm very grateful that the president so forcefully condemned the anti-Semitic attack. I think it is very, very important. I think if people think that all of these things happen because of President Trump's election, they're just kidding themselves. They don't understand the history of anti-Semitism. It's not only the world's longest hatred, oldest hatred, it's the most malleable hatred. I mean, Jews have been attacked and killed, for being a capitalist, for being a communist, for being the biggest doves, for being the biggest hawks, for being called globalists, for being called, ethnic separatists. Jew haters can always find a reason to hate Jews, and it's been going on for a long time. And I hope one positive thing that can come out of this horrific act is that people will stand together against anti-Semitism. Look, President Trump is not the reason why you have a Jeremy Corbyn in Europe, the head of the British Labour Party, who is an anti-Semite. It's not the reason why you have all these attacks and have for many years in Europe against Jews. Unfortunately, this thing has come here to the United States and has now killed 11 Jewish worshipers in Squirrel Hill, Pittsburgh. But if anything can come out of it, hopefully people can stand together and put the politics aside, understand that there are people who are anti-Semites on all sides, and people should stand together against this and call out the anti-Semites on their side of the political aisle. That's what's hard. Not just calling it when it's on the other side, but calling it on your own side, whether it's a David Duke, whether it's a Louis Farrakhan, wherever it comes, whether it's on a college campus with people trying to single out Israel and defame and demonize Israel and make all these wild charges that Israel's an apartheid state, a racist state, a perpetrator of genocide, which I think triggers a lot of people to a level of hatred towards Israel that you don't see of any other country, this demonization. Wherever it is, people have to stand up to it. And I think in protecting the Jews, I think they're going to be protecting everybody.
All right, Ambassador Ron Dermer of Israel, we appreciate your time. God bless and thank you, sir.
Thank you.
He's really good. Okay, I've laid it out. He's laid it out. Any objective news organization should be laying this out, but they're not going to, because they're not objective and they're really not news organizations anymore. Not many of them.